Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you're at in the country. Appreciate your time today. It's a presentation from USCAD on Bluebeam Revu with the focus on the tool chest. How do we get the most out of it? Quick agenda for the presentation today. A little bit about me, a little bit about USCAD. What do I want to share and what are the objectives of today's webinar? And then just diving into it, doing it live. None of the stuff is going to be recorded. There's no videos to go through and watch. It's just me clicking along with you. If we have some time for questions and answers, I'm guessing we're going to have a lot of questions during this presentation. There are a lot of people that are coming into this. You are welcome to ask questions. There's a questions panel within the GoToWebinar interface. So feel free to open that up, ask questions throughout the entire course of this. If I have some time at the end, I will try to answer those for everybody. This entire presentation is being recorded. So if you have registered for this, you'll be getting a link to view the recording later if you want to go back to the content. And all the questions that are being asked will be part of that distribution as well. So it'll be a little Excel spreadsheet of all the questions and the answers to those. You have access to that as well. Then we'll talk about next steps and what else might be upcoming from our webinars in the future. So a little bit about me. My name is Ken Phelps with USCAD. I've been here for about 3 years now, focused on just Bluebeam Revu. This is all I do for USCAD is just the Bluebeam Revu training, trying to implement, consult on it, customize the software for clients on it. I eat, sleep, breathe. This is what I do is Bluebeam Revu. USCAD, if you don't know much about us, we're a leading AEC technology firm. Been around for over 20 years. So everything from software, hardware, training on various AEC products. We're a service you can reach out to. Some of those services that we have, just BIM consulting, trying to implement training and education of the various products. Some things that you may not know a lot about is options like scan to BIM. So if you want to have us come in and do the scan of a certain location for you, we can do that. Even in production. So if you have a big job that you want and you don't have the right staff to support that production process, we can kind of be that stopgap in between to help support you in those production needs as well, and a host of other things that we can help support you with. Products that we represent, we are one of the largest Autodesk resellers in the country, and we are the largest reseller for Bluebeam Revu in the country. I think technically the largest Bluebeam reseller in the world. We support other products from the Leica, Panzera, Point Views. We have the CAD Learning online videos as well as a resource for training. Got locations across the country. We're in California, the Midwest, Southeast as well, in the Georgia. We've got people in Florida and Michigan, Wisconsin, Texas. We got people that are across basically from coast to coast, even out in Hawaii. So the goals for today, I want to go through 3 main things. There's a lot of little pieces that go into each one of these, but the 3 main ones is how do we make a custom tool set for the tool chest? The big one here in the middle is the multiple ways that we can add content to the tool chest, even the types of content that we can produce from there, getting into just basic symbols, types of tools you want to reference for like drawing lines or for measurements, or certain just symbols to have for doors and road signs, whatever it may be that you want to have listed inside of there. Then lastly, how do we share that content with other team members? So if you've built out this whole laundry list of nice tools that would be fantastic for the team to have, how do you get that in their hands? So we'll talk about ways that we can share that and promote some standards then across the team of how you do your review steps. So just digging right into it. So not wasting any time, let's just dive right into Bluebeam Revu. Hop over to it here. So in the PDF that I have, I want to start going about making a new tool chest. So where I've got mine set up here is this little kind of toolbox looking icon on the left-hand side. So here's a list of the currently available tool sets that I have in my current profile. So yours might look like mine, it may not. So some of these are just out of the box, some have been customized and brought in. But how do we make one of these? So I want to make a new one for my architectural symbols, or whatever you want to have defined to put content into, so whatever you want to call it. So to start off with making one of our own, come up here to the very top where it's got just the tool chest listed. Then go down to the very bottom of that menu here. You got Manage Tool Sets. This will give you a list of all the available tool sets you have in the current profile. The ones that are checked off is the ones you've got loaded and they're available. To make a new one, just click on Add in the lower right corner. You got two types that you can make. You got what's called new or existing. So this is where you can also load in a tool set that may have been defined from other sources. This is not the only means of doing it, but this is one of the ways. Like you got existing, you can then go browse out to where you have a tool set located at. Now where this can come into play as far as making new or existing is how you want to manage these tool sets. This might be a whole other discussion that could take the whole time by itself, but this might be a means if you want to have a centralized location where your tool sets are stored. And everyone should reference those from that location. You may want to define them, store them in that spot on a network share, however you want to access the content. Then to load those, you click on the existing, click your little ellipsis button here at the end, and browse out to those. Now that becomes the source file, that source location that your tool sets are going to be referenced from. Couple big benefits of doing it that way potentially is if you have a lot of users trying to use the same tool set, if something were to change about that tool set, everyone sees it. So it's coming from a centralized source. One downside of that process, though, is that it's all coming from that centralized source. If you're not tied into the network, you don't see those tool sets. But it depends on if you're mobile, you're active, you're moving around a lot, you may not want to go down this road. If every time you work on it, you're always in-house, or you're VPN'd in, or you're working on content in the office, this might be a great way to help force that way to standardize the content across the team. Otherwise, for this, I'm just here on my own laptop. I'm not sharing it with anybody else. I'm just making new. That makes a new tool set on my machine. So what do you want to call it? That's the title. So the title phase here is the same thing I have over here on the left-hand side where mine says engineer review, general measurements. That's the title. So what do you want to call it? I'll use mine with architectural symbols. Close enough. That's going to prompt me for a place to store this at. So where do you want to put it? It should default when you do localized one to where you have the rest of yours located. And then it will by default go to the bottom of the list. So my brand new one I just made is down at the very bottom. You may have seen a new blank one here pop up on my left-hand side. If that's not a good spot to put it, it's just not convenient being at the very bottom. You want to move it up or down, up to you. You can select the name of that tool set and then use the blue arrows on the left-hand side of the dialog box to move it up or down the list, depending on where you want to put it in the overall structure of your tool sets that you have available. So you pick and choose what fits best in your environment. I'm going to move mine up towards the top just so we can see it better. And I'll say okay. So now I just have this blank slate that I can go through and create new content and put it inside of there. So what content I put in here, this is the other big piece of what I want to focus most of today on is content we're building and how we can build it. So it can be a simple matter of here's a certain color line that I want to use when I'm doing my symbol content. So the general workflow for this is you'll use the tool, whatever that tool might be, customize it so it has the right properties it needs to take on, and then save it into that tool set. So in a very general sense, that's the workflow. So I'll go through, I'll do this here. I'm going to draw on a line, customize that line. So what should that line represent? Whatever it should have. Maybe the color should be blue. That's the needs I want to have. And it should be maybe a little bit wider. Make it a 2-point, a little bit thicker line. That's what I want to have. Now, even more than just this is it maybe for a certain purpose. because the default is going to be the name of the tool that was used to make it. So that the subject for this is just called line. If this is meant to be for a certain purpose, maybe this is showing, the edge of a soffit, or where a front stoop is supposed to stop, whatever that's supposed to represent. Give it some more context of where it's being used by just changing the subject. There's a couple ways to go through and change this. Right from the markups list, I can double click on that field and put in whatever new info I want to have here. You can also, from the properties toolbar at the very top, this first icon, I can change that info from right here. And for a third way of doing it, because 2 is not quite good enough, let's go for 3. Your properties panel, I can modify that subject from right here. So whatever place makes the most sense, whatever's most convenient for you, you've got multiple ways to go about changing the content. So it has the right property set that you want to have this taken. Now, once you have all those features defined, you've got the subject figured out, you've got the right colors and weights and the line style being used, however you want to have this tool configured, go through all those property steps and then save it to your tool chest. You just choose which tool set you want to have that be a member of. So I'll add it to my new one. So now this tool is hanging out in my new tool set I just created a second ago. Now for tools like this, where you're drawing in content, it could be a line, a polygon, a cloud, whatever it may look like. By default, the way that you defined it is going to be how it's saved in your tool set. So if I want to use this again, it comes in looking like an exact copy, which may not be how you want to use this tool next time around. I want to draw between 2 different points. There are different lengths, different distance apart from each other. So using this as drawn isn't always the most convenient approach. Toggle this into what's called properties mode. So just taking that symbol I've got here and just double click on it. That's one of the simplest ways to go about changing one of the tools you have from the drawing mode it was defined in into a properties mode that you can then leverage it however you need to. So if I got to draw a line from this corner down to that one, it's using the same tool that has all the same properties that I defined and placed in my tool set. So they all have this new info tag to them. They're all that same blue color, the same thickness. It comes out the way I wanted to leverage that tool. That's a very kind of just simplistic view of the workflow of just a simple line. Now this can be as complicated or as simplistic as you want to make it. How do you want to build the tool out? A common one to have for this might be for just shading in an area. I'll just draw in a polygon. Whatever shape you want to have inside of there, it doesn't matter too much for this. And this is for a certain purpose. Maybe I'm trying to outline conference rooms versus, office spaces, residential versus retail. However you want to break the content down, this outline defines something. Demolition phase, whatever it is. Same process for it though. Use the tool. It does not even have to be on this PDF. It could be on just a blank sheet if you wanted to. Then modify it as you need to. If I'll change this to a green color, I'll even throw in a fill inside of there. Maybe do this little pastel yellow. Make it so I can see through it. This represents something. Okay, so I'm going to fill out that subject. Not just polygon, because that was a tool that was used to make it. Give it some more meaning to it. Call this demo phase 2. I don't know. That's where I want to save this to then is my tools chest, and I'll put it back into my architectural symbols. That's here. Same idea. It comes in as drawn. Double click on it. Now I can leverage that tool anywhere I need to with whatever shape I have to. So I can be that rectangular shape. I can be really small like that on accident. I can draw in some weird shape here. Again, whatever shape you want to have, it takes on those properties. It can be also for just common notes. So if you got a common a verbiage string that you're, rejected because of reasons X, Y, and Z. You're always having to type this in, type it once and save it out. Simple common notes you want to repurpose over and over again, do it once and be done. So if you find yourself ever having to go through and change something about a tool, you're always changing the font to this, or the height of that, or the color to this, do it once and save it into your tool set. Won't have to do it again after that. Huge, huge time savers, and just overall a ton more efficient. Other ways to bring content into the tool set could be from content that you already have in the PDF. So if I have a good spot to pull some data here from, so I want to go through and grab, how about I want this sync? I need this same symbol into this tool set, but I don't want to go through and spend the time to redraw all this. It already is drawn. It's in the PDF. I want to just simply strip this from there and then add it into my tool set for use later. This is where we can use a tool called Snapshot. So if you've not used Snapshot before, it's a way to go through and just take a screen grab effectively of content that we have in the PDF that we can then paste that data elsewhere. It could be in the same PDF in a different location. It could be in a Word doc, an Excel spreadsheet, wherever you want to put it, in your email. You can paste that data anywhere. In this case, I want to just copy this from the PDF with the intent to just simply paste it right back into this same PDF, but to then save that version I've got now into my tool set. So if you're good with how this looks just the way it is, right click, add to tool chest, choose where you want to put it. So which tool set should that be a member? In my case, I still want to do a couple of things to this first. So before I go through and I take it from here, that snapshot kind of level, I want to change the name because it's by default called the name that was used to make that tool. It's called Snapshot currently. So I'm going to change that from Snapshot. Let's just make this Sync for lack of a better name. But also with this, I want to change the color. Because tools that I bring in, I want to have a unique markup color kind of tone to all of those. I don't want to have it to look like it's black line work, like it was natively drawn in that way. That can be confusing and misleading. So give it the right color, maybe based on the color that your team is supposed to have. Everyone from the engineering should all have the blue stuff, and you're part of this other civil team, it's all the green stuff, or whatever you want to have the color set to, that can be tied then to the tool set. Just adding some more clarity and power within the tool chest. So how do I change this then to have a new color? When you select on the snapshot, you can then right mouse click on it, and about a third of the way down roughly, you've got change colors on the menu. So this should default into this modify colors process type. The way this works is that you just find the source color, so find me color A, and change it to color B. I'm going to make everything red. This could be whatever color you choose for the two little swatch that's here. But now it's going to convert that from black lines to red lines. I have it called sync as my subject. It has a red line kind of layout to it. Perfect, it's the way I want to see it. I'm going to then add that into my same tool set. And that becomes a way to add content into your tool chest. So this could be a great way to go through and like have your CAD library of blocks that you may want to repurpose and just throw into a plan during your review step. You don't have to redraw all that content. That becomes a lot like work. Not a huge fan of that. So for one of the examples of this entire like tree little palette down here in this tool set, this entire thing was built from just capturing those symbols, that drawn content from the CAD files with Snapshot, and place it into a trees tool set. So you got elevation kind of profile views, you got top views, whatever orientation you want to save out of a CAD document, out of the PDF, into the tool set. Go ahead. Now, different types of content, a similar approach could be measurements. You have a measurement for a certain length. So I'm going to measure how much wall you got to have, or baseboard, or curb and gutter, conduit, whatever it is that you're trying to measure. Those tools might have their own kind of look and feel to them. So if you want to make a specialized tool for a different size piping, you got 3/4 inch, 1 inch, 6 inch, whatever it is that you want to put in there, you can make a tool specific to that sizing. It's the same approach as before. So I'll grab one of my measurement tools, place it out here from point A to point B. That's how it's going to look. So I got the poly length tool I used. It has the overall start to finish distance, whether it's 2 points or 15 points. Overall distance is being shown. But again, you can customize that. So if I want to change this from a poly length measurement, I'm going to say this is for measuring conduit, because why not? Change the color to maybe this lovely shade of pink, because why not? So I'm just going to show the overall distance, and I'll even go in so far as to change the style of line being used. This represents conduit for me. Good enough. So I change the subject, color, a line style, whatever you wanted to adjust about this. Make changes. But it's going to be the same approach. But just like before, as it was drawn is not the way it's saved by default. So it's over here. It shows my conduit, but it comes in the same 11'4". That's not how I'm going to use it every time. Again, go back and just double click. Now it goes into that properties mode. I can use that tool. So if I want to go through, and if I was tracing out the conduit run that I want to have inside of a certain space, it'll have that same color, line style, the same format applied to it. Now, one of the big benefits of doing something like this, so this is not meant for a whole estimation takeoff, kind of a webinar to go through, but it's a big piece of what folks can get from this. It might be one of the next ones I do is focused on just estimates and takeoff. But this can be then leveraged even further in the markups list. You can see here I got the 3 I've got done for conduit. It has the lengths for all those. So here's the individual lengths, my 11'4", my 61'4". Then here's the overall total of all the conduit I have in the PDF. So if you have these tools defined for specific materials that you wanted to go through and measure and take off, you can build that out. Various diameters and sizes, even the markup list down here can be customized to have your own columns. So maybe you might have a generic piping is the name of it, and you have a column for diameter, and you choose that. Here's my 1/2 inch through whatever you have in that list for diameter sizes. You can choose that off of that list. So you can build one tool for multiple diameters versus having, here's my 1/2 inch pipe, separate tool for 3/4, 1, 2, whatever you want to have. They wouldn't have to be individual tools. Now also with this, as you're bringing in like symbols, content like we got here, like these trees being used, bringing those symbols in, say for example, my doors. You may have a symbol library built out, and that can be a fantastic asset for you. But the concern with those types of symbols oftentimes is sizing. It's just too big because what you brought them in, the PDF plan it came from was a certain size, but you're trying to use those same tools on a plan of a different size. So scaling can be a factor for this. One of the options you have for each one of your tool sets, this little gear icon on the right-hand side of that, you have a way to go through and define a baseline scale. So what that kind of refers to is what size were those symbols that you maybe pulled or you drew meant to be in reference to? Were they all 1/4 inch to a foot when you pulled them from the CAD file, from that PDF? Was it 1/8 inch, 16th? What size were they? that can then be set as the base scale. So if that symbol is ever used on a plan of a different size, it'll scale up and down for you accordingly. So let me show you what I mean. So these are all symbols that are brought in. I'm not sure that the scale these are meant to be set to, but I'm going to go through and just go to my presets, and I'm going to assume they're all meant for 1/4 inch to a foot. I'm just picking a scale at random. You'd probably know more about the details you have, where they're from. Now what that means that if I use this on any scale that's different than a 1/4 inch to a foot, they will scale up and down as they need to. So my current plan is roughly 1/8 inch to a foot. I think I'm just a few thousandths off of that, but when I put the door in, it's this big. Now, if I happen to have maybe a viewport on a different area of this, I'm going to go ahead and just make one just so we can see the difference here. So I'll put a viewport down below. I'll change my size. So my sheet is set to 1/8. I'll make this viewport set to 1/4. I'll use that same door in here. See the actual door scale up for me? So outside of that region, it's this big. Inside of the region, it's this big. It knows the scale difference between those and it will size them accordingly. So again, you're not forced to go through and make a dozen different symbols because you want to have that same tool of a dozen different sizes. It can just be one, and you scale it up and down accordingly. Now, what I would highly recommend is that you don't have symbols in this one tool set that come from different scale sources. Meaning that I don't want to have, well, this door is meant for a 1/4 scale, but that door is meant for 1/8, and then this window or door is meant for a 1/16. You're setting one baseline scale. So all the symbols inside of there should come from that same size base scale. So if they all came from 1/4, then they should all have come from that same 1/4 inch plane. That'll give you a much more consistent result to how those get applied to the PDF that you're trying to assign them to. Another nice tool that's part of this can be sequencing. So let me show you what I mean. So with sequencing, that's just one of the default tool sets. You make a symbol that every time you introduce a new one, it'll just go to the next number in that sequence. You can build out one of these with your own content. So versus being the red circle or whatnot, you can make it a triangle. You can change this up to have the right kind of naming scheme you want it to follow. And even come into here, so if I were to have number 2 out of my 1 through 5, if I delete that one, it'll resequence. So my 3 becomes 2 and 4 becomes 3 and so forth. You can choose to maybe not have it do that. So let's just say for a quick example, I'm going to build one of these types of tools just from scratch. You want to have just a text box hanging out somewhere with some content there. Doesn't really matter what you type. You just want to have something entered. And then some type of geometry. What do you want to wrap around this? So for example, I'm going to come into here and draw in kind of this oblong kind of shape. Close enough. Something kind of like that. There's a shape I want to have going around my text. Not perfect, but good enough. And then group these together. So you want to have your geometry and your text be one object. Now to select these, I just right click and drag the mouse. Again, the way you move with this matters. I'm going, in my case, right to left. It's the crossing window, so whatever I cross will be selected. You go left to right, it has to be fully contained inside of that bounding box. So pick both of these and then group them together. If you're keyboard savvy, you can use just Control G instead. Now it's one piece. I can call this whatever I want to call it, and then add it into my tool set. So I got mine hanging out here. So I want to have that become this sequence tool. So every time I added a new one, I want it to go from number 1 to 2 to 3 or whatever I want to have inside of it. On that symbol that I have inside of my tool set, I can right click on it, about halfway down the menu, go to sequence and define yourself a new sequence. So in this, you choose the style. Is it 1, 2, 3? Is it one of this alphanumeric thing? Is it ABC instead? You've also got the option for a prefix and a suffix. So if you want to always have a certain, it's a job number, it's job 1, 2, 3, and the numbering scheme is a dash 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the part that actually will sequence and index through your numbers. You can choose. So I might want to have, here's my RFI. Start at 1 and maybe step by every 5, every 2. What might you change that to? That's up to you. If you want to go just 1 by 1, I'll step mine by 5 just for something different. The options down below, though, can kind of make or break this working. Because most times with something like, say, an RFI, RFI 1 is going to always be RFI 1. I don't want to then have the tag for RFI 1 be deleted, then RFI 2 becomes RFI 1. That can just add a whole level of confusion that just is not worth the effort. So at the bottom of this, you want to make sure that you uncheck the renumber when markups are deleted. So like my previous one I showed for the example, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I removed 2 out of that list and everything re-indexed back down. So it's still 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't want to have that happen. And also your options for the numbering scheme being used is a sequence per page or for the document. You choose. So now the new symbol here defined, it may be hard to see on screen. It's a little, almost like a backwards play arrow here. When I select this and add it in, it brings in the tool onto my sheet and it'll number those for me. I didn't make my text window wide enough, but you get the idea. As I add new ones in, so 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm going to index by every 5. So mine goes from 1 to 6 to 11 to 16. I'm going to go through and I'm going to actually fix this before I get too far. I don't like how that text is laying out there. Always one of those, try it before you go through and deploy it to the rest of the team. So I'm going to go back in here and fix this by just taking that text field and make this a little bit wider. I'm going to change it so it's centered, both vertically and horizontally. That's more like what I'm after. And I'm going to re-add that into my tool chest and make that my sequence. Didn't like how I was laying out before, so let me just go through and add that back in. So now I add this into here. It's just tagging those with RFI 1, 2, 3, 4 on down the list. Also, if I were to remove one out of here, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, since I had the option to resequence unchecked, 3 stays 3 and 4 stays 4, it doesn't renumber those to 1, 2, 3. So it'll stay put. So it's a matter of just putting in some text. Whatever the text is, doesn't matter. It's more of a placeholder. But like you've seen me do, I forgot to resize the width of that to incorporate the number of characters I'd be using in the RFI callout. So it just didn't look good. You can always go back and fix it. Now, part of this too, it's kind of getting into the weeds, but you can have different colors for all the various tools. Again, examples might be here for just out of the box. Architect is red, contractor is all yellow, engineer is all this light blue color, the cyan. It could be per department. It could all be customized so that this team's markups are all that color. Even going even further with all the content is that you can add them also to their own layer. So you have this layers option here too. So if you have all the content from the engineering team or the planning team or whoever you got for different departments in-house, there can be a layer for all their markups. And those can be one more property added to the tools you make before you put them in the tool chest. Benefits of that is if you have a plan you're trying to review where you have hundreds and hundreds of markups, you can just go to the layer for a certain team and just click on the little eyeball icon for it, and all those markups just get turned off. This helps give you better clarity into what you're trying to review. That's not so much focused on the tool set specifically, but it's ways to add some value to the tools that you have in the tool set. So after you've gone through all these steps, you've built out all the tools, you have different symbols and text, just notes that you want to have added, whatever you may have for content in your tool sets. How do we share it? How do we get this in the hands of others to then leverage the same tools that you spent all your blood, sweat, and tears to make? There are a couple ways to go about doing it. If you're just rolling this out to the team, say for the first time, and someone's gone through the effort to kind of build that baseline standard for the team to use, this can be tied into your profile. So you can have a profile set up that's specific to the tools you want to reference. So I can go and select on the one I have current right now as my advanced, and then export out the entire profile. Make sure you have the include dependencies here. So it brings in all the miscellaneous stuff that goes with this, the tool chest and all the tool sets that are in it as part of that. Then you can load the profile. And the profile brings with it the whole layout of the environment, what toolbars you have turned on and where stuff is positioned, as well as all your tool chest items, even down into the custom columns if you've gone that far with this. All the information being stored on here can be tied to the profile too. You load it in, everything comes forward. Different means could be, you might be a year and a half into using Bluebeam Revu, and you've just built out this nice, robust, powerful tool set that nobody else has. You don't want to roll out a brand new profile because everyone kind of has their own kind of flow and it's massaged for them to use currently. You may want to just share the individual tool set itself. So if I want to go through and share my one for my architectural symbols I've built out, I want to first make sure I've saved it. So all my current changes to it are saved to the file. And you may recall from earlier when I made this one the first time, I chose a place to save this to. Each one of these is its own file. So I got one for my arch symbols, review, contractor, engineer, they're all their own files. I can take this same tool set and export it out and put it to its own location. So it has to go to a network drive and X subfolder on drive such and such. You can save that one individual tool set to that location. Now, as the recipient to this, to load that one tool set in, you just go find that location where the file's saved at, and all you have to do is just double click on it. That's good enough. It'll load that content in after you double click on it. You can still go to the tool chest, go to manage, go to import and browse out to where you have the content, find that shared file and import that in. But there's also a means of bringing that same tool set into your environment. Now, what might be a potential hang-up in that whole sharing process is the naming of the tool set. So if someone else already has this same one loaded on their machine, you've modified yours, you added in an extra 3 or 4 tools into it. Now yours is different because you've modified your localized version of it. They may not want to load in the entire tool set in because it might mess up their own definition of what maybe they've customized for. So one of the easy ways I've seen to go about sharing the content from here is just simply make a brand new empty PDF. Nothing in it except the tools that you want to share. We'll pull that in. I'll do a quick measurement. Of course, I've not got a scale set. Doesn't matter. Sure, 1/8 inch. use the symbol here, drop this in, use the tools that you want to add into here, save this PDF, and put this PDF someplace where the other team members can open up and look at it. Then they can choose from the list saying, yep, I like that, makes sense. They can pick it, and then they can choose to save that into their tool set. So they can leave what they've built alone and not overwrite what they got with your new one. They can pick and choose out of there what they want. So lots of ways to go through and share the content. I'm actually running short on time, so there's like 1,000 more things I want to show, but I don't have the time to go through and do it. I'm respectful of the schedule we've got set. There are a bunch of questions that came in to the questions panel. I'm not going to have a chance to get to all of those, but I will definitely go through and be responding to each one of them in the spreadsheet. So at the end of this, it'll be probably a couple of days. You'll get a link to go and view the recording of the session, and with that email will also be the spreadsheet of all the questions and the answers to them as well. So if you still got questions, feel free to type them in. I know it's a lot of content to cover in a short window of time. Hopefully it kind of made sense. So some of the questions and answers, I'll see if I can get to some of the quick ones here. Looks like a couple were answered already. So a shortcut for custom tools, I'll grab that one here real quick. There isn't really a great shortcut from the tool sets that you create. Let me go back over into Bluebeam Revu. There are, however, shortcuts into a tool set that's called My Tools. So by default at the very top, it may be hard to see on screen, but you see in this My Tools tool chest where there's a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the shortcuts for those specific tools. So say, for example, if I hit 1, it's going to launch this tool. So all I'm going to hit here is just 1 on my keyboard. Now I'm going to use the highlight tool. Or if I hit 2, it goes into my text box option automatically. And it has its own defined properties and color and the box being drawn around it. It's already predefined with its own property set too. Now, any one of the tools that I have, like if I want to use, say, the sync, I can drag this into my tools and just drop it under one of these numbers. So right now I'd drop mine under 4. So if I hit 4, I'm putting the sync in. I don't have that option for any other tool set, just because you have too many 4s if they all have their own, too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing. You only have one access point, one keyboard shortcut that's applied to then one tool set. So instead of making your own, you might go through and build these out and then pull out of there your most commonly used tools and add them into My Tools under the various shortcuts that you want to assign them to. But even the one down here, I got like 11. You got to hit 1 a couple times fast. Otherwise, if I just hit 1 and stop, it goes to highlight. If I go 1, 1, it'll hit 11. It goes to that tool. So you can keep on adding. The numbers will keep on going up and up and up. So if I go into here, it becomes 12. If I go 12, it drops that in. So that can be a great way just to gain some efficiencies and put these tools in. So if you are keyboard savvy, that might be a great way to go through it in a more effective means. I personally, I'm terrible at the keyboard. I can barely even spell my name on a keyboard well. But that can be a huge asset to being productive with it. So next steps, there's something that you want to see more detail on, something that maybe is specific to you and your team, feel free to reach out to us. You want to have something that's personalized for you for a presentation. Webinars we got coming up, or if you need something that's more personalized, let us know. See our email there, phone number to call into. Other webinars that are coming up next few weeks. We got one on the 20th, 27th, and the 2nd. A couple here on just the recap from AU. What's the recap for construction, or just in general we learned at the AU conference a few weeks ago. And with that, we are at the end of our time here. I want to be mindful of everyone's time and be respectful of that. So thank you very much for your time today. If you do have more questions, I want to hang out for a little while longer. I'll be looking at those. I'll try and type some answers in if I got time to. Otherwise, appreciate your time today and have a great rest of your day.